Today we'll be looking at the subtopic of gender in reference to social psychology. So again, we're moving to part 3 of the class, looking at social psychology and social life. Specifically today, we'll be looking at the subtopic of gender in reference to social psychology. Just to briefly recap our last class, basically I wanted to lay out the groundwork for recognizing kind of what we've been doing and what we will be doing in part 3. So in part 2 of the class, we looked at culture, the different subtopics, and now we're going to not forget about culture, but really emphasize the social psychological dynamics within social life as a whole and within our subtopics. And so basically, we can say that we're looking at how we learn culture, we make it part of our mind, and how that shapes how we think, how we see ourselves, how we see other people, and how that shapes how we act. So when looking at the social psychological foundations of gender, basically, we're learning that gender culture, the culture of masculinity and femininity, expectations we have for males, expectations we have for females. So you're not born with this knowledge. You have to learn it. And once you're kind of socialized in these gendered ways, you make that gender culture part of your social psychology. And so these meanings you begin to learn over time, what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a girl, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man. And you start to use these meanings, as a lens through which you see people. So you don't see people as people, you see them as a girl, as a boy, and all the meanings that go along with, those labels. And we look at men, you look at women, again, you don't see them as people, but you see them through those gender lens and all the meanings that we attach to women, femininity, men, and masculinity. And so we can look at this in terms of gender beliefs about self. So we'll break it up into gender beliefs about self and about other people. So here, basically we're saying that we have these self understandings in relation to gender understandings. Who I am, as a male, who you are as a female. And so this is basically we're looking at kind of the gendering of the self, not seeing ourselves as people, but seeing ourselves as men and women. And again, the expectations that coincide, men and women as social labels. And so, am I expected to know this or do this as a guy or as a girl? Um, am I supposed to be good at this? Am I supposed to be bad at this? Um, as a guy, as a girl. And then, the actual actions that you do or perhaps actions that you don't do based upon your sex. So as a guy, am I supposed to be doing this? As a girl, am I supposed to be doing this or not? So again, often this is done on a very unconscious level. We know gender culture so well, it's been part of our minds for so long. We don't recognize that we're kind of thinking in such ways, but often we do. And so, as a guy, I'm not expected to do certain things. So sometimes I don't expect myself to do those things. On the other hand, as a guy, I am expected to do other things, and I place those expectations on me. So again, you can kind of see this going on. Sometimes we're very conscious of it, sometimes we're not, but nevertheless, it becomes part of our social psychology in terms of how we start to see ourselves through that gendered lens. And so here we can look at kind of the social aspect to it in terms of the social psychology. It's not only about kind of oneself, but how you see other people as well. So basically, we can say these are social understandings in relation to gendered understandings of masculinity and femininity. So not about imposing gender on yourself, but imposing gender on other people. So these things, carry social expectations, as a woman, as a man, what do I expect out of certain people, based upon their sex? How do I evaluate them? And so, do I evaluate them in terms of are they supposed to be good at this or not good at it? And how I expect certain things out of them, certain performances. I don't expect certain things out of men. I don't expect certain things out of women. So again, the idea is instead of seeing people, as people, you use gender beliefs socially to create kind of an understanding of what's going to happen and why it should happen, or what's not going to happen and why it shouldn't happen based upon gender beliefs. So, when we get into this, we need to recognize the significance of a context, because context matters. So, we can say that the more you know someone, the less you're going to use gender beliefs to guide your interactions with them. So, in other words, when you're around strangers, when you're around an acquaintance, you start to use these gender beliefs more to kind of see and understand who these people are. But when you get to know a person, you know them for who they are. So you don't have to use these different beliefs about gender because you actually know the person for who they are and for who they are not. And we can also say that the more gender neutral a situation is, the less we use gender beliefs. So, in other words, if it's a situation where we don't associate men or women with the situation or the task, it's just kind of something we associate with people, then we won't use gender beliefs as much. So, those are two things to recognize. But on the other hand, we can say the less you know someone, the more you are going to use those gender beliefs to guide your interactions. And that's kind of the rub, because we really don't have the time to get to know people on that deep level. We really don't, we know some people, but we don't know a lot more people. And so, in other words, we're using these gender beliefs to guide our interactions much more than we think, simply because we don't know a lot about the people we're interacting with. And then we can say that the more a task is gendered, so the more something is gender typed, the more gender beliefs will come into play. So if we associate, politics with men, then we're going to evaluate men and women differently, based upon that gender task. If we, associate, something with femininity and women, again, that's when we start to see things more in a gendered manner as well. So context matters, depending on the context, how well you know somebody, how well you don't know somebody, how the task itself, the situation itself is gendered or not. All those things will kind of influence how much or how little we use gender beliefs to kind of guide our interactions. And so this provides, a short and sweet kind of background into the reading for today. So the reading for today basically is an activity, kind of an exercise. And in the exercise, you have kind of two different parts. Each part comes with some questions. And so keep in mind that there are no right or wrong answers to these questions. What the questions do is basically show us how everything's kind of in a gray area when it comes to the nature of gendered beliefs, the nature of gendered interactions. And so you're looking at a situation where, you could say that gender is coming into play, why people are doing certain things, why they're not doing other things. Perhaps gender is not coming into play. So again, there's no right or wrong answer, but you can at least start to think about the situation, and perhaps the gender does matter, perhaps it does not. Because what we start to see is when we start to practice, say, gender social psychology, when we learn these, gendered understandings and we start to practice them in terms of using them in our interactions, then sometimes you can start to create what we call a false inequality between the sexes, where, you don't vote for the female politician because you don't believe that women are well suited compared to men to do politics, or you don't want your kid to be in the male kindergarten teacher's class because you believe a female kindergarten teacher would do better with the kid. So when you start to kind of see things in gendered ways and you base your evaluations, you base your actions on the gendered aspects rather than anything real, then you start to create a false inequality that's not based upon merit, anything actual kind of real, but simply ideas that you've learned about women and men. So, that's what we look at. There always will be inequality, among men, among women, inequality between the sexes. But, you like the inequality to be there based upon something real, based upon merit. Is this person qualified? Are they, good at what they do? Versus simply, I don't think men can do that, or I don't think women can do that. So that's kind of a little bit of background into the dinner and drinks exercise you're going to be doing. And for this, when you do this for, basically it's going to be the in-class assignment for today. It will also count as your reading reaction because it's going to be a little bit longer and detailed compared to most in-class assignments. So what I've done, basically provided you a 2-for-1. You do the in-class assignment, and that will also count as the reading reaction for that day. So that's what I mean by a 2-for-1. You do the in-class assignment, you get credit for that. But when you do the in-class assignment, it will also count as the reading reaction for today. So I'll leave that there. Again, just a little bit of background into what you're going to be doing for the in-class assignment. And again, there's no right or wrong answer per se, but different ways to kind of think about how gender can influence or may influence situations, and how right or wrong that can lead to that production of false inequality not based upon merit, but based upon gender beliefs.